Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends update video. Well, how about that when it comes to having a new set of news that updates one of my past videos here on the Urban Legends side. I absolutely love when this stuff happens because through the passage of time, invariably, there'll be some set of news that creates some exciting updates for to my past videos, such is the case here when it comes to a video that I did about 6 or so years ago, and it had to do with the topic of Luigi within the Mario 64 game. Well, as it turns out, he really was within the game, and this bit of news is the one that I'm going to talk about here, and then I'll briefly mention my past video and how it relates to this new video here. So let's go ahead and let's focus on that information here, in this case having to do with the exciting bit of news about Luigi truly being found within Super Mario 64. For starters, I just wanted to briefly mention my past video that I did around 6 or so years ago. So that was a video that I did actually around April 23rd, 2014, a little over 6+ years ago, and in it I talked about the famous urban legend about Luigi being within Super Mario 64. It was one of those things where it's a popular subject matter, one of those enticing controversial matters where everyone loves the idea of him being tucked away somewhere within the game, just waiting to be found, maybe as the most unlockable secret of all time. But as it turns out, at least up until the beginning of the game, like whenever it was released up until now, there really wasn't any hard, concrete proof. There was pretty much just stuff along the lines of maybe here and there bits of information, and then of course the infamous statue, the one where Super Mario actually looks in front of it, that created a whole new meme, and that was the L is real 2401. So for the longest time, years and years, people kept trying to decipher, what does that mean? What does L is real 2401 mean? Like, was that just some gibberish that was put within the game itself, or was there truly some hidden meaning involving the letter L, which of course relates to Luigi, or at least that's what the urban legend was. If you haven't had a chance to check out my video back then, I'll include the link for below, and then that way you'll be able to catch up on this bit of news. But yeah, no real direct proof associated with his existence, at least until now. So as it turns out, there was a recent game link, or a recent leak associated with Nintendo, and I'll include the link below as well for comicbook.com. It shares more information about it, but apparently, yeah, Nintendo had a massive leak, and that not only showcased a bunch of source codes and information, but a bunch of other prototypes as well of certain games, and then also that includes other stuff involving Pokemon as well. If you're a fan of Pokemon, there may be some bit of big news coming soon from all those leaks. But one of the biggest set of news, the one that shocked the world, in the gaming world at least, is this. This type of source code has shown that yes indeed there was some form of Luigi within the game itself. In fact, you're looking at some of the screenshots associated with that type of source code. So it goes to show that he was being placed in some form of development within the game itself, and then ever since that time period, it was buried there within that part of the data leak. Part of the data as far as Nintendo had, all until this point when there was a leak, and then finally that's when people are trying to place the pieces together. People have even gone far enough as this. They've been able to use that particular source code to actually create how Luigi would have looked like within the game itself. Now I'll mention this. Obviously there was another game, a Nintendo DS game involving Super Mario 64, where he was finally introduced there, but we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about the original Super Mario 64 game, the one that was released in 1996. And yes, they've been able to use that type of coding to showcase how he would look like within the game itself. Obviously, it's not no real stretch in terms of how you would imagine Luigi to look like within the game, so it's not like it's going to be a whole new version of the wheel when it comes to Luigi. No, it's just going to be Luigi as he looks like Luigi, as you would imagine he would look like within a type of game involving the 64 mod itself. But yes, it's still very exciting because it shows that yes, he was within it. He was truly absolutely within the game, but for whatever reason, somewhere along the way, that's when it was decided to scrap him and then just leave him on the side. side. And then it still begs the question as to why that essentially was done, because ever since up until the time the game was released, or actually even before that, when all those articles were coming out, like on Nintendo Power, like you'll see some of the screenshots here. You'll see how there were some very cool looking shots showcasing Mario and some of the worlds that he was in, and there was Bowser as well. But eventually, imagine people back then were thinking to themselves, why was there no shots of Luigi? Why were there no pics associated with him? You would think that with so many other past games involving Mario, that he would have his famous brother alongside him within the biggest release ever in a new platform, in that case being the N64 module at the time. And yet here he was, when the game was released, completely gone. He was just completely invisible to it, and there wasn't like there was going to be any other type of release afterward, like let's say another version of Super Mario 64 that would have his updated information. No, he just pretty much just stayed invisible or completely gone from the game pretty much thereafter. But what got people excited was, again, all the little hidden information that people would see, including that infamous L is real 2401. But what gets people really geeked out about that term is this: if you look at the date of the game when it was released, and then finally the data leak, the one that involves Nintendo's recent leak, then actually 24 years and 1 month exactly since that time period, that's when we found out as far as Luigi being within that game. That is just blowing people's minds away, because they're thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, that term L is real 2401 was exactly literal. That means that Luigi is going to be really revealed 24 years and 1 month afterward in terms of the game's release. Obviously that's a lot of coincidence associated with that as well. You would have to stretch things a little bit further out, but I can kind of see how that link is there. Now, I don't think Nintendo necessarily planned this out this far ahead, where 24 years later they would purposely have this leak associate that information with that infamous phrase. But still, it's fun to play with that type of term and then the ideas surrounding it, and that's where we get to at this point. But yes, as far as this recent update, this bit of news, it's very exciting, at least for fans like me on Nintendo's side and Super Mario's side. It's the idea that yes, he was at one point within the game, and then he was absolutely not placed into it. But it shows proof that all those times that Nintendo and others have been stating that that Luigi wasn't necessarily going to be in the game ever from before, there was kind of like more of a half truth. Maybe they were talking about at certain points of the game, but not necessarily like an overall status. And it has to do with this too. In fact, you're looking at a nice representation of it here. It just showcases all the stages associated with most software/game developments. And so when I kept wondering, like, why wasn't he within the game itself, considering his famous status being the brother of the most famous mascot character of all time? It just got me thinking that it all had to do with that end release date, that gold release date, and how in the world of games, I don't know too much of it, but I know enough to read, like when I was reading several articles and several books related to game development, that kind of date sets in stone. So once it's set, a lot of widgets, a lot of different components start moving into place to make sure that that date is officially done. Just because there's so many parts moving at the same time, if you were to move that date, it would just completely just collapse the rest of those moving parts. And so when you have that particular date set, everything else has to follow through. And something tells me that somewhere along the way, all the components involving Luigi's, let's say, code or whatever it is that makes up his character within the game, probably just wasn't working right. Like they were not having enough time period to fix all those bugs associated with his code, and so he probably had to be deleted from the game in order to ensure that everything was all right. But yeah, I don't know exactly how early or how late that was, but considering the fact that it showcases that they can be actually placed into some kind of character models, like a 3D model of sorts, where you can see how he looks like at an early point, it goes to show that he was going to be there the past development. Like there was going to be at some point that he was truly going to be placed in the game, and then just at that point, then that's when it seemed like it was cut off. But yes, that type of global release date just can't be moved in most cases because of the difficulties involved thereafter, money wise also, and then a lot of other stuff happening as well. But yes, just wanted to present this bit of exciting news when it comes to my Urban Legends update. Luigi really was within Super Mario 64. He really was in it. There was this source code and other type of coding tied to him as well. But if anybody has any more information, anything else I might have missed about this new bit of news, I imagine there's going to be even far more coming up soon because this leak is very recent in the world of Nintendo. And so there's bound to be more material and other stuff coming along. Then please share it below. I might even make more updates associated with this if it merits doing so. But is anyone else super excited about this? I know it's like not much in the world of gaming today. Like obviously Luigi is in other games as well, so not really, having him within a small game 20 plus years ago, a larger game 20 plus years ago with a module like this and instead of news, it wouldn't really make too much of a blip. But for those of us that were N64 fans, this definitely makes us very, very excited. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.